To help us parse today's goings-on, we want to bring in our all-star panel. They are stars. Steve Chaggaris is the senior political editor for CBS News. Emily Tisch Sussman is the campaign director at the Center for American campaigns director at the Center for American Progress. She's also a Hillary Clinton supporter, and last but not least is CBSN political contributor and Republican strategist Hogan Gidley. Emily, we haven't heard from you yet, so please give us your insights about. We talked a lot about the tea leaves being read. Potentially better looking for Hillary Clinton's prospects than Donald Trump. But if the Clinton team should be worried about one thing right now, what should it be?
Well, the early vote has been very good, and that is great for Clinton. It's particularly been very good in large Democratic areas that are very concentrated Democratic, and so that's all been great. But Election Day still matters. There's been a ton talked about of the early vote. I think somewhere around 46 million have voted already. But Election Day matters a lot. The majority of people still vote on Election Day. And in some very important swing states, particularly Pennsylvania, you can really only vote on Election Day. So depending on how that goes at the polling place and whether people really have, made a plan, found a way to get there, the lines may be a little bit long, and some of the Trump supporters may be turning out in some intimidation tactics. So that would be the thing that I'd be looking for, to make sure that everything still goes well today. The campaign does an excellent job. We've been talking about ground game. What does that really mean? It means identifying your supporters, contacting your supporters, making sure they know how to get to the polls, they know when it's open, they know if they need ID, all that sort of thing. That information has been very, very good. The campaign made about 21 million voter-to-voter contacts over the weekend. That's incredible.
That's a phenomenally high number.
That's phenomenal. That's an incredible number. But Election Day still matters.
So, but even you are saying, though, it's still questions of organization and perhaps countering those tactics, if you will, by the Trump campaign. Steve, I wonder, looking at this, is there an electoral weakness? Is there a spot on that map that Hillary Clinton is still perhaps maybe staring at an extra little bit today?
Well, I think there's definitely a concern about a couple of states, and this is why we saw her visit those places, Pennsylvania and Michigan. Now, there's no serious polling that shows that it's in danger for her, but if she doesn't get the turnout among certain demographics in these places, then their fear is that Donald Trump's enthusiasm among other demographics could pose problems for them. So you're looking at Hillary Clinton and others in Philadelphia last night. Why is that? Because they figure if they can juice the numbers in Philadelphia, get more people out in Philadelphia like Obama did in 2012, then the state is out of reach for Donald Trump, as it was for Mitt Romney. Michigan's a similar situation where you get urban areas, Flint and Detroit, you get those numbers up, then the people who are in the more rural or in the more working class areas are muted a bit in terms of the vote. And so, yes, there are some concerns there. I do want to point out the point that she makes about the early vote is correct. 46 million is the number. In 2012, there are 129 million people who cast ballots for president. So it's a huge number, but there are still, if we match 2012, there's still 80 million people who are going to vote.
One demographic I think we haven't talked about that really kept Mitt Romney from the White House is evangelicals. Estimates were anywhere from 6 million to 14 million didn't vote. If they would have voted for Mitt Romney, he would have won the election. George Bush hovered around 83 to 84% of evangelicals in 2000, I guess, won the presidency. Mitt Romney was around 79, 80% and didn't even try. Trump was in the 60s a few weeks ago. He won evangelicals largely during the primary process, but he's going to have to get numbers up in that particular category if he's going to have a chance to win this election. And if he does, if he can get them up to Bush numbers, he may be in better shape than even we are estimating. If not, and he's hovering in the 60s or even in the low 70s, I don't know that it's going to be enough.
Emily, a couple weeks ago, there was talk of more aggressive talk on the Clinton side about states like Georgia and Texas and Arizona. Then they had the announcement from the FBI that James Comey was continuing the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. How much do you think that's dimmed the sort of prospects for flipping those kinds of states in particular?
I think the places that really hurt her was building on the momentum that she had. It looked like she was going in a really strong, positive path to close out the last 10, 12 days of the election, being able to talk about a positive message, a message for a positive message for a Clinton presidency, and not having to run into the other muckier kind of hand-to-hand combat that had been happening towards the rest of the election cycle. So I think because they had to then turn a little bit of focus after Comey, I think it did break that momentum. And so there has been a little bit less discussion about it. But I do think, if we look at where she has been, I think in particular, Ohio is very interesting. It's been projected over the last couple of weeks that it would go for Trump. But there's obviously something there that, she's been going there. She's been going there with a lot of star power. And if she can bolster the turnout there, then it can be within reach.
And it's interesting, Steve, if you listened to President Obama last night in Philadelphia, veer from a Hillary-specific message, if only for a moment, where he acknowledged, hey, she needs help, she'll need help. And he started calling out, he went down the ballot himself there in Pennsylvania. It perhaps speaks not just to the confidence on the part of the campaign that Hillary Clinton has got this thing in the barn, but also the need for effective governance once she get there. As you pointed out today, against the prospects, however bleak at this point, that whoever wins could be looking at one term.
Could be. And look at what could happen in Congress, too. So even if the Democrats have a great night in the Senate and they pick up 5, 7 seats, their majority will be razor thin. And if you look 2 years down the road, not to say that I've been counting the days, but by the way, till 2020, there's 1,456 days till the 2020 election.
Don't do that to
But
us.
anyway, starting the countdown now, if you want to get that on the screen.
This is a math-free program.
Yeah, but in terms of midterms, Democrats have a really harsh map to defend in 2018. So whatever majority they get, if they get it in the Senate, may be short-lived. There's not going to be a lot of time for her to get stuff done, and frankly, she's going to have a House, chances are a House that's going to still be a Republican majority that's not going to necessarily want to cooperate with her. So it's going to be a tough time, and as we've seen, when there's gridlock in Washington, the party in power tends to be looked at most negatively, and at that point it would be Hillary Clinton if she wins.
And let's talk, too, you were making a very good point as to why this thing began to change with the Comey emails, but it was trending in Trump's direction before that, and I think for two main reasons before the Comey reopened the investigation. One was Obamacare. The numbers came out. The administration now admitted that the premiums would go up by an average of 25%, I guess, nationally. In some of these states like Pennsylvania, where it's going to go up 53%, North Carolina, it's going up 40%, Florida, it's going up 14%. Trump actually began to use that in his stump speeches in those states, which is something we thought was a really good deal. Then the Clinton Incorporated stuff comes out, a little muddled for a voter to understand, but it's still the pay-for-play stuff. Then you put Comey on top of that. I think it completely put Hillary on the defensive for the first time, basically in the entire election, as the litigation was about Trump and his attitude and his ability to run the country. And I think those are really kind of the three main factors that begin to stem the tide. But let's also go back to this, and you used the star power word. When Trump would go out and give a speech, if it was razor sharp, on point, systematic, surgical, he would give the speech and then that was it. When Hillary goes out and gives a speech, then it's followed by Barack Obama giving a similar speech, bolstering the talking points, Joe Biden giving a speech, Tim Kaine giving a speech. She had the rock star power in the political world with the bully pulpit driving the same message. Trump had his family. That's a much different, albeit some Americans love the juxtaposition of the star power of the politicians, the Washington elite versus an average, everyday billionaire family.
Don't forget about Ted Nugent, though.
The Ted Nugent factor cannot be underestimated in this election.
I mean, the list really does.
Well, but also it's interesting, though, and I think it cuts both ways with Hillary Clinton, is that the juxtaposition of her with somebody like Michelle Obama also shows voters maybe what they're not getting in somebody like Hillary Clinton, right? And it emphasizes some of these negatives that voters have of her.
It was exposed when she said, we left the White House broke. She had to bring Bill Clinton out, and everyone goes, oh, he did a great job of explaining it. And then was like, oh, but he's so much better than her. It's the same thing when she's with Obama or with Michelle. They are so dynamic in the way they speak.
They are.
It makes her look so flat.
I will concede that point. She is not as good a speaker as probably her husband, and I think at this point, everybody loves Michelle. Nobody comes in close to Michelle.
Right.
She is not as good a speaker. And I do think that having them all on stage together does make a little bit more difficult for her. But the fact that they are there bolstering that point for her. And I thought it was very interesting / weird that last night, the closing the closing speech that Trump gave at his New Hampshire rally before he went to his next closing rally, he went with his stump speech, and then he added in one additional point that was not in his stump speech, which was, I'm here in New Hampshire, and then I'm going to Michigan. And I was like, well, then why are you saying it here in New Hampshire? That's the place that I think that when we talk about disorganization of his organization, that's where I think it matters. If people are there to feel like he's here to make me feel special, he works for me, then why are you talking about this other state that you're now considering is important? I think that may be a little bit of a disconnect for his voters, which could then depress enthusiasm.
Maybe he felt he did enough by dropping Tom Brady and Bill Belichick's names.
Oh, wow. You
I went there, didn't I?
If he'd only added the at the end, that would have really sealed the deal for him.
Wow. Patriots fans everywhere. Just put a little pin in the voodoo doll.
Let's just put it this way. Why are we talking about Tom Brady's politics when he's having one of the best years
wow.
of his career?
Incredible.
Wow, you're
Anyway,
going
sorry.
He's
there.
incredible. He's
Going
incredible.
Well, the good thing about Bill Belichick and Tom Brady is they'll certainly be weighing in on it exhaustively today. I'm
Right,
sure
I'm
we'll
sure. Right.
get all
Probably
those
go.
No opacity over there at all.
If we then do make something of an issue, quickly, about the collective surrogacy that Hillary Clinton has employed, I think it does bear mentioning. It's always been something, the part of the job that she has not really taken to. It's never come naturally to her.
Right.
On the other side, then, while perhaps people want to see the ultimate outsider be alone on the outside, for the disaffected GOP voters, the Republican numbers that sat there in the mid-70s when they had to be in the 90s for him, don't we think that some of those on the fence or just off of it saying, no, I'm not going there, in part are saying that because nobody else is out there for him. There's nobody in leadership out there. I mean, even if I want change, I don't want him in the Oval Office alone, knocking over the desk
I don't want
alone.
that.
And I mean, keep in mind that you make a really important point about Republican leadership. The folks from the Republican side of the aisle who have stumped for Trump, Sarah Palin, Newt Gingrich, Rudy Giuliani. None of them are in office.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Mike Huckabee did a speech for him in North Carolina. He's very popular there, but still, you've got none of the leadership, and it is the person, it is the Michelle, it is the Barack Obama with the charisma, but it's also the message they're delivering and undergirding the message from the person at the top of the ticket. Trump didn't have that. In fact, he had people arguing against a lot of what he was saying, and a lot of Republicans, quite frankly, are angry at the leadership and angry at the candidates who signed the pledge. And the sweet irony of the pledge was put in place to keep Trump from going rogue, to use a Sarah Palin term, and instead he wins the nomination and all the rest of the candidates scattered away from it. They signed the pledge. I think a lot of Republicans in the rank and file, even though they held their nose and weren't all in for Trump, they're still angry at the people who put their pen to paper and said, you're supposed to be with this guy and you weren't.
Well, then it becomes, there's a meta irony in that he then won the nomination and at times also felt as though he also was going rogue, which is really...
Absolutely. You'll take,
wow. Fast.
you'll take
Like
the
the
irony.
highlighter's going rogue.
Well, it's having the wingspan of a pterodactyl.
You'll take the irony and trump me with the meta irony.
Yes,
You'll
I'll
double
come
down
back
on the
over
yeah,
the
that's
top.
Right. Right.
One of the things I just think is worth remarking on when we talk about centers of power in the party, and I did write about this for The Atlantic, but I still think it's worth mentioning. The conference of power in the Democratic Party has largely been women on stage together, which is something we've never seen before in American politics. Elizabeth Warren and Michelle Obama have proven themselves to be the most powerful surrogates for Hillary Clinton. And multiple times this campaign season, the signal moments have been between two women and two women only on
And
stage.
interestingly, I do feel as though if it's possible to have not made enough of the fact that we could conceivably have the first female president in American history tonight, that it hasn't. That's been a kind of others receiving votes.
Well,
in the
we
top
were
25.
saying this when she clinched the nomination too. I mean, it was not remarked on. I think what a lot of people felt would have been a historic moment. Part of that, I think, is Barack Obama broke a different ceiling in 2008, and so this maybe doesn't feel as historic to some people, but half the country are women. This is a pretty big deal, and so if she does win, I mean, I think it's something that we can't forget is a pretty historic moment for this country.
Yeah, I think that maybe it wasn't as remarked on as much as we would have expected, partly because there was a little bit of a backlash at the beginning of her running. She did run right from the beginning as saying, I will be the first woman president. That was right out there at the beginning. You know, I'm with her. You know, it was all out there. But there was a little bit of a backlash, I think, partly media-driven, I think partly voter-driven, from young voters in particular, who didn't want to feel like they were being spoken to, and that they didn't have, that there were barriers for them. There were they felt like the possibilities were endless for them. I think over the course of this election, the course of the discourse, and I think particularly where Trump has been as a candidate, has really brought that gender piece back up for people and has allowed for those very powerful moments with women. So, you know, we'll get a little shimmy on, little pantsuit nation.
Pantsuit nation.
I think that we can leave it at the
Yeah.
shimmy. That's where we're going to leave it. That's where we are.
That.
Our control, they're dying slow deaths in there. So we're gonna move along. We love
But
you.
they
back.
love us.
Steve Chaggaris, Emily Tisch Sussman, Jay Hogan, Gidley. We very much appreciate the time.
Thank you.
collectively.
Thanks.